This is a tutorial for the interactive IOP simulator. What this allows us to do is to be able to look at the variables that affect intraocular pressure. Intraocular pressure is by far the #1 factor in the disease process of glaucoma and many disease processes within the eye. So let's go over and take a look at some of the things that we can do with this interactive simulator. If you look at this, we have on the left side inputs that we can change and see how they affect the output. One is episcleral venous pressure, which can be altered. We have outflow facility, which can be altered. We can also have interventional outflow facilities. So these are things such as surgical interventions and pharmaceutical interventions. We can also change our arteriolar pressure. There are certain drugs and disease processes that can affect the inflow facility as well, so we can also examine that. We also can look at this dynamically, not just from a static standpoint, but from a dynamic standpoint. We can see how pressure changes over time from an initial pressure setting to the steady state. In addition to that, we can also look at the diurnal variation, which occur over the period of throughout the day, and we can examine how these pressures change through the evening. So let's take a look. We'll start with one up here at the top. And the outputs over here, of course, we have the equilibrium output. This gives us our steady state pressure and the interventional steady state pressure. So we can actually look at the difference between the two based upon various interventions. In addition, that also gives us the flow rate of fluid through the anterior chamber. The first output is our graph of steady state, and what this does is this shows a graphic of the outflow facility and a graphic of the inflow facility, and where these two meet is what we call equilibrium, and this is the steady state pressure that is achieved. So if we look at our variables over here, we can change these and say, #1, we have a disease process where we have an arteriovenous fistula, and we want to examine what happens when this venous pressure goes up dramatically. So we can do that, and what this allows us to do is be able to look at the new steady state pressure and the new equilibrium that occurs, which is a significant increase. Conversely, say there was a drug process which actually reduced the episcleral venous pressure, we can actually reduce this down as well to something which is minimal, and we can see how it reduces the intraocular pressure significantly. Let's put it back to something that's nominal, back here to about 8. In addition to that, we can look at the outflow facility. So in the disease process of primary open-angle glaucoma, it is a decrease in outflow facility, and say we reduce this to roughly about half, and this allows us to be able to see what a decrease in outflow facility dramatically increases the pressure, and it dramatically also reduces the flow rate through the anterior chamber. Now, in addition to that, not only can we look at these static IOP changes, but we can also look at interventional static IOP changes. So let's say we have this pressure of 36 and we have primary open-angle glaucoma with a decreased outflow facility. We can actually increase that outflow facility by, say, adding a drug or doing some type of surgical intervention and bring that up from 0 up to something which is significant. And so now we see a split on where these occur. So the initial pressure without the added outflow facility was 36, where the equilibrium is occurring right here, and then we reduce that with the interventional outflow facility down to about 21 millimeters of mercury by increasing that outflow facility, and there's various drugs and devices which can do that. Now, in addition to that, let's say we have something that patients ask us: how much does it change if I reduce my blood pressure? Well, we can also look at that as well, and you can see that, say, we take the arteriolar pressure, and this is now the arteriolar pressure intercept. So this is actually a straight line fit. This is not the true arteriolar pressure, but it does translate to it. So if a patient, say, were to reduce their arteriolar pressure, mean arteriolar pressure, down to I don't know, maybe another 16 millimeters of mercury, how much would that affect the pressure? And we went from, I believe, what was 36 down to about 32.8. However, on the interventional side, it really doesn't make a huge difference. It went from about 21 to 19.5. But that's a significant drop in arterial pressure. So it does give you an idea that arterial pressure does have an effect on this. In addition to that, there are various drugs and disease processes that can increase and out and in the inflow facilities. So let's say we have an inflammatory condition within the eye or post-surgical where we've broken down the blood aqueous barrier and we increase that inflow facility significantly. And you can see that as that occurs, now we have a new equilibrium. And if you go back up here, we've significantly increased that pressure. And again, this can be due to various disease processes, and that gives us a new equilibrium for both the non-interventional and the interventional as well. But we can see how these things interplay with each other. In addition to that, there are certain drugs which can decrease the outflow facility, or the inflow facility, such as acetazolamide, and you can see that also has a significant effect, and we know that it does have a significant effect clinically, where it can reduce the pressure significantly by doing that, and also decreases the interventional, at least on the outflow end of things. We'll put this back to something that's a little bit more nominal at close to 0.01. Now, in addition to that, we can also look at, well, how do things occur over a period of time? So let's say we start, and I have it already set at hypotony. There's no pressure inside the eye. How long is it going to take to be able to get up to some nominal pressure? Say, I don't know, 90% of the nominal pressure over there is probably going to take about 13 hours given no other intervention whatsoever, just in its natural state. However, the pressure does come up asymptotically to the steady state. Interventionally, of course, there is a little bit of a difference with that, and it does take a little bit longer time with that. Now, in addition to that, we can change that and say, somebody comes in and they have a pressure of 50 or 45, and we want to see how long does it take to be able to get that pressure down. Well, from an interventional standpoint, as we're trying to get this pressure down to something that is reasonable, it looks like we can certainly get it below 30 within about 8 hours with the interventions that we've noted above. Of course, if we increase those interventions, that time rate that it's able to come down is of course much quicker. And then two of the other variables, which are actually quite important, are the diurnal variation. And what affects the diurnal variation is the percent of inflow facility change versus the percent of outflow facility change. So if we're looking, and let me bring this back down to something that's relatively nominal on here, down to initial pressure of, say, 16 right there, and we have our diurnal variation, which in most people runs at about inflow at about 50. So you'll see that, and the diurnal variation and outflow facility decreases about 45. So you do get this diurnal variation of several millimeters of mercury, which tend to peak in early mornings. However, that can be exacerbated considerably if we increase the amount of inflow facility change, and you can see this as we increase it. You get those peaks which exacerbate each other and increase significantly. Also, if we decrease the amount of outflow facility variation, that also increases this peaking as well. And conversely, if you reduce these things down to something that are pretty much equal on both, you almost minimize the amount of diurnal variation. You can actually invert these curves as well if these are reversed. And there is some theory that there is some inversion in given patients on the differences in outflow and inflow facility. But this gives us an overall view of both the static and dynamic abilities of the interactive IOP simulator. And this is something you should play with and change around, and it gives you an intuitive feel of how these things actually work. Thank you so much.